Om Namo Arihantanam. Om Namo Siddhanam. Om Namo Ayariyanam. Om Namo Uvajayanam. Namo Loe Savasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Savapava Panasano Mangalanam Cha Savesim Paramam Have Mangalam. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for anyone joining from India. Welcome to our webinar, Volunteering at Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary and How It Changed Us. Really appreciate everyone joining us. This is a webinar that is organized by the Jaina Ahimsa Eco-Vegan Committee, part of Jaina, and the Jain Vegan Initiative, which is also part of the Global Jain Network. And just a few minutes about our organizations before we jump into the main event here. So the Ahimsa Eco-Vegan Committee, as a committee of Jaina, supports veganism, not eating, wearing, or using animal products, and the reduction and elimination of activities contributing to global climate change and destruction of the planet via personal transformation, community education, and advocacy. And this webinar is part of our community education and advocacy. We have on our website, veganjains.com, lots of resources, including Thanksgiving and Everyday Meal Prayer that I put up yesterday, recordings of sadhvis and sadhus and other religious authorities about our main principles of Ahimsa and how it relates to veganism, and recordings of webinars that we've done previously. We, in the last year, have hosted a number of webinars that we actually kicked off with the founders of Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary. We called the series Ahimsa in Action, and Shaleen and Shilpi Shah were featured, and you can find the recording there along with others. And so really happy to kind of come full circle and bring you the voices of two volunteers who will tell us more about what it's like to volunteer there in just a couple of minutes. Also wanted to give Sunny, our co-host, a chance to share a little bit about Jain Vegan Initiative. So Sunny, I'll turn it over to you. I've just got two slides, this one and the one with your schematic, if you wanted to tell us a little bit about that.
You're not sharing slides yet.
Okay, let me share again. And just so everybody is aware, we are recording and we'll ask you to stay muted until a little bit later, but the chat is enabled throughout this webinar. Go ahead, Sunny.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Gina. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to have this event. This is something that I've been looking forward to personally for some time now. A little bit about myself. My name is Sunny Jain, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Jain Vegan Initiative. This is a global collective of like-minded Jains. We are Jains that have, through awareness and education, are trying to push the needle towards veganism in the Jain community. This is something that we started maybe a few months ago, but we're just really grateful and excited to be a part of our global Jain community and help push initiatives in that direction. So thank you so much. Absolutely, and our vision is to create spaces and content to support vegan activism in the Jain community, this is just like a mind map of our strategies and how we're accomplishing that. We're doing this through a website, through social media management and pages.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And now on to the main event. Both Mihika and Mansi are students at the University of Pittsburgh studying neuroscience. Both of them are going to become doctors. I'll tell you a little bit about Mihika first, and then we can have her share how she came to volunteer at Luvin Arms. So Mihika volunteered at our local hospital, transporting patients to and from procedures for more than 3 years. And she loves working with others, especially children. She's also volunteered coaching children to play tennis, taught them Bollywood dance, and tutored children in math and reading. Growing up, she often asked friends and families to go on vacation so she could take care of their pets. And as a Jain, she has a deep-rooted love for all living beings, making Luvin Arms the perfect place for her. So tell us, how did you hear about about Luvin Arms? And then how did Monty get involved in all of this too?
So, sorry. I've always wanted to spend more time with animals, and I never really got the chance back home. And one day, my dad happened to know about Luvin Arms through Jaina, and he said it'd be the perfect place for you to go volunteer. And I said that'd be amazing. And I wanted to bring Monsi along because I wanted to bring a friend with me. So that's how she got involved as well. If she wants to talk about herself.
Hi, my name is Mansi, and Mihika is my best friend. So I also heard about Luvin Arms through her. And I'm not Jain personally, I'm Hindu, but they invited me to come, and I was more than happy to like envision this new experience. And we always talked about it. We started talking about it in I think March, and it was like a while away. So we didn't really always think that it was going to happen. But I think the sooner that the trip came, I think we wanted to put in the effort, and we wanted to be the ones who set the trip in place so that we could actually go and experience this whole new experience like Luvin Arms. Like we've never done anything like that before, and I think it was a really nice place to start off our vegan experience.
And so Monty, also, you had volunteered before. You had volunteered at local daycare in your local YMCA. You'd helped out neighbors, and you'd attended classes at Mandir, volunteered at the hospital. So neither of you was completely new to volunteering, but it sounds like this was a little different than anything you'd done before. And it sounds like maybe when we talked earlier about it, this may have been also kind of an adventure for both of you, as like a kind of nice transition between high school and college. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. It was both of our first times flying on our own and traveling on our own in general. 2 weeks was the longest time I had been away from home on my own. I don't know about Monsi, but it was amazing to gain some independence right before heading off to college. And there was no downside to the experience at all. It was amazing.
That's excellent. When you first arrived, what were you doing? And then some of the highlights of your time at Luvin Arms.
When we first got there, we went headfirst into advocating for the sanctuary without even visiting the sanctuary. But it worked out so well. There was Boulder Fest for the weekend that the first weekend we got there, and we were in a tent for the sanctuary, and we were trying to pass out flyers and help get people aware of the sanctuary and trying to visit and volunteer there. So we had never met any of the residents at the sanctuary yet. That's the term that Luvin Arms uses to refer to the animals there. And we started passing out information on the sanctuary, but we were also learning about it ourselves. And I thought it was really interesting and cool that in our first weekend there, not only were we advocating for the sanctuary, but we were learning about it ourselves as we were advocating for it.
That's a great way to learn, right? You kind of get thrown into something and then you're teaching others about it. And how did it feel to be promoting veganism before you had done it yourself?
Yeah, so we had only been there for I think like a day. Like we came Friday night, I think, and the next day we didn't even go to the sanctuary. We just went straight to Boulder Fest, started setting up, started reading over the flyers of what we were supposed to be telling other people who passed by our tents. So we were kind of like learning off of our script about like veganism and how it's like, I mean, it's a good choice for other people, and why we're supporting it and why we want other people to also support that lifestyle. And after that, we went to the sanctuary the next day, and we got to learn how the information that we were teaching other people also relates to the residents that we were meeting there.
That's great. What an immersion. So maybe what I can do is now I'll share some of the pictures that you sent me earlier, and you can tell us the stories behind the picture. So we apologize that the video of our speakers is going to get a little small, but you'll see them in the pictures too, and then they'll tell us the story. So I'm going to share screen again. And let's see if I can get this to show up in the right place. Okay. And then we'll go to the pictures. So tell us about this one.
This is Alfie. He's one of the goats. The picture on the left, he's always so curious. We were towards the front of the barn and we had just left from cleaning out his pen, and he's still like looking up on the gate. He's like, where are you guys? I want to play. He's just amazing. Over our 2 weeks, you learn that every resident has their own individual personality, just like every person does. And you learn and grow with them just as they're your friends.
Should we go on to the next one? And Sunny,
Yeah, I don't know if Monsi had anything else she wanted to say on Alfie.
yeah, do you want to say anything else about this one?
Yeah, I know one of the cool facts that we learned about Alfie in the beginning was that Alfie actually uses his horns to open the gate because he's like
wow.
he's very curious. So one time I think he even got into like the chicken pen because he just escaped and he used his horns to open up one day. So I think like that shows Alfie's personality. He's very like mysterious and outgoing, and he's very curious and always wants to know what everyone is doing. So it does show a lot of his personality through this picture.
That's amazing that he could use his horns that way.
This picture I absolutely love. Well, we were cleaning out all of the pens. All the residents just want to have playtime, and I think it's so great and so fun that every single day on the sanctuary was another adventure, more new experiences, and there was no downtime, no boredom ever. You're just surrounded by friends 24/7.
I know, like, we came into the sheep pen because we had to just clean up the droppings and re-put in some hay. And Jared came up to us and we were both like using the brooms to clean out the hay and put it back into the trash cans. And he came up and he started like nudging against the brooms and indicating that he wanted us to play. And we were trying to finish our work, but like obviously you can't leave that cute face alone. So we gave in and we gave him some cuddles.
Yeah, when we were putting out like fresh straw down for their bedding, Jared would come in and he would like nuzzle his head in all of the new bedding, and he would just try stopping us from working because all he wanted was to play.
So when you first got there, if you hadn't been around animals, were you scared of them to start with? And how did you kind of overcome that?
I think it was definitely a little nerve-wracking. For me, it was a little more scary to be around birds like the turkeys over sheep, because you look at a sheep and you go, oh, they're cute and cuddly. But it definitely is a big like trust curve, because all of the residents have experienced trauma from humans. And when you first get there, they are shy and timid, just like any other person would be too, rightfully so. So you see over the 2 weeks we were there, they learned to trust us just as we learned to trust them. And it was really amazing to be able to see. The first couple of days, I remember Maxine she's the sheep mom. She wouldn't come up to any of us. Whenever we'd go into the pen, she'd take her kids away and go to the other side because she was nervous. And then over the next 2 weeks, she slowly warmed up to us. And by the end, we'd be able to cuddle with her and pet her, play with her, which was an amazing sight to see.
I think it just shows like how important it is to spend time with these animals, because even in just like the week or 2 weeks that we were there, we gained so much trust from them. And I can't even imagine what the care team up at Luvin Arms is like if they've been there for like about a year or however long they've been there. They've had these connections with these residents for so much longer, and it just shows like, see, like this picture too, it's just showing how much time and care that they put into like taking care of these residents.
So this is a picture of one of the care team, right, Mihika? I think.
Yeah, So the care team takes care of the roosters. Sometimes get infections on their feet. I had no clue. And so this is a picture of one of the care team members taking care of one of the roosters. You can see he's wrapped up in a little towel. His eyes are closed. He's like napping. And it's amazing. You can see that even the birds, every resident knows that they're so well taken care of, and they're just another like family member for us.
So there's the rooster in the towel that the care team member's taking care
Mhm.
of. And then there's another curious rooster, like
Yeah.
kind of poking into the picture, like wanting to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And how did they kind of relate their information to you? Did they teach you different ways to take care of the animals when you were there?
Mhm. Yeah, as soon as we would spend certain days with certain residents, and this particular day we were spending time in one of the chicken barns, and we were learning how to take care of them, how to feed them, how to like clean their pens because it's all different for each species.
Wow. All right. Next one.
We love our cows.
We were
Um,
always sold on the cow hugs. Shartrina she's the executive director. She's who we were staying with. From the first day, she was like, "You guys need Tito and you need Tito's cow hugs." And this was like one of the last days we got our cow hugs with Tito. I don't know if that's a later picture, but this is us with Marley and Samantha, the two cows that are there. And we're just like there hugging them. They were just laying down, and we decided we had some off time when we were not cleaning everything up from the pens, and we decided to just lay out with them.
Yeah, they're so cuddly. They just love giving love. They're big dogs and they're wonderful. I sponsor Samantha now, the cow with me in the picture. So they're just friends.
What does it mean to sponsor,
When you
Samantha?
sponsor a resident, each month or yearly, you can pay to take care of the cost of their like medicine and their food, and you can sponsor any resident, and it's all on the Luvin Arms' website.
Yeah. And then you get some periodic news about them too.
Yeah, you get updates, you get pictures of them. I recently got a new picture of Samantha. It's lovely.
So Samantha is one of the cows. Tito's another one, right?
Yeah.
How many are there on site?
There are 5 cows, I want to say, but I'm not sure if there are any new residents since we last.
And yeah, and I think you were saying earlier that there was a story about when you first got to Luvin Arms and you were asking about the cows. And
Yes.
so tell us about that and how things change once you spend time with them.
So when we usually think of cows, we think cows need to be milked. And it wasn't even getting to the sanctuary. It was the drive from the airport to Shartrina's house with Charlotte and Uncle. And I asked him, I was like, so on the sanctuary, do you milk your cows? And he was like, no, because you don't need to milk a cow unless they're pregnant. Just like any other mammal, they don't give milk unless they're pregnant. And that was such a simple fact that completely went over my head, as I'm sure it went over so many other people's heads day to day, that the things and animal products we think are so natural really aren't natural at all.
Yeah. And then you got to know these cows as individuals.
Yeah, and they're incredible. They're so playful, and you can see how much happier they are, clearly.
Do you know if any of the cows were calves of mother cows that had gotten separated or were themselves dairy cows? Do they have any connections?
I know Marley and Samantha were babies from dairy cows. I'm not exactly sure, but the bigger cows, Tito, Domino, and Milo, they were they're male cows from dairy. I'm pretty sure they were from dairy farms as well because they just discard the male calves.
No, I
So
think they were saved from the slaughterhouse because I know Tito was built to be bigger so they could get more meat off him. So I think
he was an extra one. Yes, he was an extra one on the truck.
I think them 3 might be saved from the slaughterhouse, and these 2 are dairy cows.
Wow, interesting. And then this one is a as another resident, which I think
Yes.
people don't realize how big pigs can be.
Yeah, I know I was surprised the first time we met the pigs. And this is Felix right here. And you can't see in this picture, but he always has this one tongue that sticks out on the side. And we also have another picture of him eating peanut butter and his tongue is just like sticking out and it's the cutest thing ever. But this is us, like all of the residents basically act like pets because they all love belly rubs. They all love being like snuggled and getting pets. This is us giving a belly rub to Felix. And yeah, he's just laying down, enjoying all the snuggles. And one of
Another
the
thing, I was gonna, did you want to continue, Monty?
Oh yeah, one of the things that we learned, I know we associate like pigs with being like dirty and muddy, but pigs are one of the cleanest animals like in the pens that they have because they always like fecate in the same place and they sleep in the same place. So they have a different place for each one so that there's like a section off. So it's not being like, you're sleeping and you're pooping in the same place. So they're very like clean with that. And they only go in the mud when they want to cool off. So I know like there are so many stereotypes that we associate with pigs and with other animals, and it's just not correct. And I think other people need to learn that too.
Yeah, and from our time there, one day a vet came and had to trim Garth, one of the other pigs' hoofs, and he was very nervous, as he would be. And I thought it was amazing to see the care team was playing calming music for him to make him feel more at ease. And it was the same as when a little kid gets a shot and you hold their hands. And I thought it was so amazing to see just how much compassion the entire care team has for every single resident, just to make them feel as comfortable as possible.
As a doctor, I can say that we used to joke in medical school about how pediatrics and veterinary work is very similar, actually. Tell us about this one.
So this is Aria. She's one of the goats that they have. So she's like Alfie, they all stay in the same cage. This is just us when she came, she was out for a little bit. So we hadn't seen her for a couple of days. So she wasn't very warmed up to us. So she's not really like engaged in the picture or like very interested in us, but this is one of our first times meeting her.
Wow.
And actually when we visited the sanctuary, Arya's best friend, Sebastian, he was another goat, had recently passed. So she was feeling very down, and we spent so much time, us and the entire care team spent so much time trying to give her as much love and companionship as possible. And recently I know that the sanctuary had new residents, new little goats as well. And in the Ahimsa in action video, you can see Arya jumping and playing with them, and just the amazing turnaround for how happy she is with new friends now is incredible to see.
Ahimsa, nonviolence to all beings. When you give attention to your breath, when you say Ahimsa, you breathe in, Him, you breathe out. Sa, the sound of contentment, the sound of home. The word Ahimsa is the breath that we breathe. It's the feeling in our heart when we are all doing all that we can physically, cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually to fulfill our promise of compassion to all living beings. Our logo was updated this year to reflect Ahimsa, the core principle by which we operate. Ahimsa is practiced in every thought, action, and feeling at Luvin Arms. It always has been. To create a world of Ahimsa, nonviolence to all beings. Through compassion, we must all act now. Taking action is Ahimsa. I would like to summarize with a quote from Mahavir, a wise teacher whose name comes from Maha, meaning great, and Vira, meaning hero. All of life is just like me. I want to live. So do all souls. All living beings. The instinct of self-preservation is universal. Every animate being clings to life and fears death. Each of us wants to be free from pain. So let me carry out all of my activities with great care, not to be harmful to any living being. This is the heart and soul of Luvin Arms. This is Ahimsa in action.
Every time I watch that, it still touches me. It's such a beautiful one. Is there anything you wanted to tell us about any of that footage that sparked any memories?
Everything in the video is just the core of Luvin Arms. Like, spending 2 weeks there, you just see everything, and you're able to the compassion that you feel by watching that video is how I felt every day at Luvin Arms, helping take care of the residents and spending time with the residents. It was incredible.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to Sunny. We have a question in the chat, and then I think Sunny might want to have some more questions for the two of you. So take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Mihika and Mansi, thank you again for sharing your story and your experiences. I think for a lot of us in the community, this is, this may be our first time getting such a close, I guess, look at animals in such a way. I think most of our lives, our only interactions with animals are via, animal companions such as dogs and cats, or going to the zoo, or like petting zoos. And I think this gives us a better look at animals in a way that shows that they have personalities, that each of them have their own individual needs and wants. And so I think it's wonderful what Luvin Arms is doing and what all of you are doing with this organization. So I had one question. I know I mentioned earlier that I really appreciated how animals were referred to as residents rather than just animals. And I think one thing that we often overlook is how we refer to animals. Sometimes we talk about like the language we use. Like oftentimes, like I think growing up, you would refer to an animal as its rather than he or she. And I realized like how inbuilt like language is, right? And so I think it's really refreshing to kind of look at animals as residents, referring to them by their first name, or at least, like their pronouns as well. So what were your, I guess, like thoughts, maybe when you first joined the, volunteering team and you were told this. So what was like your thoughts on that overall?
I know when we first talked about it, I didn't even realize that they were calling the animals residents. And because we went, as Mahika said, we went straight into Boulder Fest and we were referring to the residents as animals when we were talking to other people. And I know we realized that some of the other people at the tent were calling them residents. And we kind of like looked at each other and we're like, wait, what? Why is the word residents being used? And Shartrina like explained to us that we're all animals, honestly, like humans are animals. So just referring to the animals that we like, the residents that we have at the sanctuary as animals and not just like all animals in general, I think that kind of like it's meant to be sort of derogatory because we're implying that we're not a part of that animal nature. And I know me and Mahika were also watching a podcast, and like you were saying with language, we kind of don't have a word for meat eaters. We usually just call them like meat eaters or carnivores or omnivores. But this one podcast that we were listening to, they called them carnists. And so we called people who eat meat carnists. And, we have vegans and vegetarians. And I think so like creating a word for each of those kind of shows the difference between everyone's diets and everyone's beliefs, and it like just creates a difference. And you can see like how people who are vegan versus how people who are carnists interact and how they interpret the environment and climate change and just like different issues in general.
Yeah, definitely picking back off of what Monty said. Language is very like ingrained in our beliefs and in how we view certain things. I know when we got to Boulder Fest, Shartrina had also told us that Luvin Arms is a farmed animal sanctuary, not a farm animal sanctuary, because none of the residents at the sanctuary are meant to be on farms. They are meant to have their own individual freedoms. And it's very interesting once you get there. At first, you might think it's silly to call the residents, but as you learn more about it, you realize this is the right way and this is what we should have been doing because they are their own individuals. And just like Monty was saying, humans are animals as well. So it's not fair to consider them their own, like it's not fair to consider them to be below us when we're all on the same playing field and we're all equals at the end of the day.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know like in a lot of the animal rights spaces, they'll refer to animals as non-human animals just to like kind of make that distinction as well, to what Monty was saying earlier. And yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And even like myself, I catch myself using certain words that I just realized is so ingrained in our system, right? And so, words like livestock and just, like for sheep, you say just sheep in general, like referring to the whole collective rather than individual sheeps. So things like that, I'm actually personally trying to get better at. And like you said, farm animals as well, right? It kind of, refers to the commodity status of an animal as well. And so I think just the whole system is kind of built in such a way where we look at animals, non-human animals in that way. So no, I really appreciate that. And I think referring that, these non-human animals as residents is, I think, a great way to kind of reinforce that. I think another great question I wanted to ask is, I think, I forgot it was Mahika or Monty that mentioned that when it came to like the bird animals, that was, something that was a little bit more intimidating at first. And one thing I had heard recently is animals that have the eyes that are like frontal, they tend to be, we're able to, I guess, empathize with those animals more because they look more like us, right? And so if you look at like monkeys, for example, it's very easy to empathize with a monkey that's in distress. But then if you look at like a pigeon, right, sometimes it's a little harder to see their emotions, to see that, hey, they have personalities as well. And so I wanted to ask like your experience, like especially with like turkeys. Do turkeys have personalities as well? And do they have wants and needs just like the other animals?
They 100% do. We were cleaning out the tea girls' pen. So they're a group of turkeys that are all named after different types of tea. So we just refer to them as the tea girls. And they were all coming at the door to try and play with us. And we didn't want them to escape their pen. So I remember I was trying to imitate turkey calls so I could get them to go back towards their pen. And then once we got there, they would come up to us, and at first they're a lot bigger than you usually would think, just because I hadn't ever seen a turkey in real life before. And they come up to you and they love, like, they pecked at shiny jewelry and they loved like coming up and snuggling their neck on you. And they all have their own personalities. And it definitely took some time to trust them and for them to trust us. But once that trust was built, it was so fun to be around them.
Oh, that's
I know
wonderful.
Mihika said that she was afraid of the turkeys, and I think I was too. I'm kind of just afraid of like, or I'm not afraid, but I was more timid with the birds in general. And we had visited the chickens and the ducks before we had visited the turkeys. So they were like the last group that we had seen. And so I was used to the chickens and I was used to the ducks, but it was our first time visiting the turkeys. And like Mihika said, they're a lot bigger than I expected. So just going in and we were just like sitting there cleaning the like poop again, and we were like cleaning out their whole pens, and they would come up to you and they would like peck on your boots or like peck on, it was light taps, like they weren't hurting you or anything, it was just them playing around. But I know I was a little scared in the beginning until you realize that they're not trying to hurt you and they realize that you're not trying to hurt them, and you can just have a nice interaction with them.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible. And even like a personal story, there was a pigeon that wasn't able to fly. I think its wing had gotten broken. And so my mom noticed it and she brought the pigeon home, and just to try to figure out what we can do. And I'm sitting here with this pigeon, not realizing that, this pigeon has like, personality, a way to express it as well. And, I think just maybe a day or two later, the pigeon walks over to me and touches his tail next to my foot. And at first, it was a little strange, right? You never see a bird so close to you, but it made me realize that was its way of showing that was their way of showing affection, right? And so that, I think that was really like a heartwarming moment for me, because that made me realize that I'm so grateful that I'm able to do this for this pigeon. So I think that's wonderful. We did have a question from the audience as well, and I do want to encourage our chat. If you have any additional questions for Mihika or Mansi, feel free to write in the chat, and we'll definitely share it. And also, if you want to unmute and share your question yourself, please feel free to do that as well. I think we have a smaller group, so we should be able to handle it. But one question that we received is, how has your life changed after volunteering at Luvin Arms? Obviously you were volunteering at the sanctuary for 2 weeks, which is a long amount of time, and you had time to interact with all these different residents. And so how was like your life changed since then, and maybe your outlook?
I think the biggest thing for me is I've become so much more conscious and aware of how I speak of other animals, or how I speak of other people in general, and also my own actions on the environment or on other living beings. Just being so much more aware of how you affect other people, how you affect other living beings, and what you can do to like mitigate how much you hurt other living beings. Because growing up Jane, I used to think that even though I was not vegan, I was vegetarian, I used to think I was doing everything in my power to be as conscious as I was. I grew up on the principle of Ahimsa, and I thought I was doing everything I could to not harm any living beings. But there's always more you can do. And the 2 weeks being immersed in Luvin Arms just opened my eyes even more to how much I can be aware of my surroundings and of the people and living beings around me.
I think, like Mihika said, we were both vegetarian going into it. We weren't vegan. And when Mihika told me we would have to eat vegan for 2 weeks, I was like very surprised. Well, I wasn't surprised, but I was just taken aback, and I was confused as like how that would work, because I had never eaten on a vegan diet before. And I wasn't like, honestly, I wasn't very looking forward to it, because everyone knows like the vegan stereotypes. They think all you eat is salad and all you eat is like lettuce, vegetables, that's it. But when we went, we ate such a variety of foods, and I think people don't realize how many options there actually are for vegans to eat different foods. And so we honestly didn't think we were going to stay vegan, but I think coming back, we've realized that being immersed in the experience that we were with like the residents and everything, and then also watching these documentaries and learning these different facts on the environment, on our health, I think it just had such a great impact that we realized that we want to do everything we can to keep up this diet, even in college, which can be hard at times, but we're trying our best.
Okay, so 2 questions, and then we'll do a poll if that's okay. So one question is, what are some of the documentaries that you really enjoyed? You talked about like kind of environmental and climate and about the animals. And then the second question is, how does being vegan relate to these animals? Like there's one experience, you know, people have companion animals, they have pets and they still eat meat, right? You can be around animals and still eat them, but how do they relate? And why is it necessary to go from vegetarian to vegan to help them?
To answer your first question, we watched 2 documentaries over our time in Colorado, Cowspiracy, which followed a man who knew that we always think that the worst like contributor to environmental issues is fossil fuels and natural gas, but it's really the animal agriculture industry. And it was a man who kept going to different green corporations asking what the real issue was. And over time, you learn that just how awful the industry is on the environment and on all of the animals that they raise. And then another documentary was Game Changers, and it shows professional athletes like Olympians and their transition to veganism and how it benefited them, and how a vegan diet is extremely healthy for you, even better than the quote unquote like common diet, a normal diet of eating meat that we like in society say. And then we also to and from the sanctuary, or anytime we were in the car, we'd listen to a podcast called, or it wasn't a podcast, it was an audiobook titled Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows by Melanie Joy. And that audiobook is a little bit more on the graphic side, but it goes into like the conditions in the factory farms and how each species is actually treated. And there's quotes from workers from the factory farms and people who have seen it in person, which all 3 are amazing resources if you want to learn more about veganism and about the animal agriculture's industry's effects on like the world.
I know we learned about the Patriot Act, and I think that was one of the most eye-opening things that I had learned on the trip. There's like a part in the Patriot Act where you're not allowed to talk about the animal agricultural business and everything that goes on there. And I think that just alone, that fact alone just tells you how much is actually going on there, and the fact that they're trying to suppress what is going on, and that we're not allowed to talk about it, and we're not allowed to publicize and tell other people about things like this. And if we do, then people are at risk of being sued and things like that. I think that alone shines a lot of light on how messed up the industry is.
Is that the same as ag gag laws?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard of that.
I'm not sure either, but the Patriot Act was put in 2006, and it's put into the like First Amendment rights. So it's in Cowspiracy, and I forget what year, I want to say 2005 or 2006, there was a rancher on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and he was talking about how awful the industry is and all of its negative effects. And from that show, the beef industry had taken its biggest hit of profits ever, and that's where the Patriot Act was put into play, because their profits were hurt so bad. And it was awful that it was put into our First Amendment rights, that you're not allowed to say or do anything that will directly hurt the animal agriculture profits.
Wow. I said I only had 2 questions, but I ended up having like 4 stuck in there. So the other parts of my questions are more around like the connection between transitioning from vegetarian to vegan and helping these animals. Like what is that connection?
I think
you can talk, Nancy.
Okay. I think going to the sanctuary itself and being around the animals was the biggest factor in me being converted into veganism, because me and Mahika were both vegetarian before, and I never thought I would ever go vegan, because I had never just even opened myself up to the possibility of that. I never saw that as an option. But going to Luvin Arms and being around the animals, I think you realize that these animals are so much more than their bodies and their meats and their milks, and you realize who they are and their personalities, and you can't go back to just looking over all of the facts that you learned on our trip, and I can't just ignore everything that I learned anymore. I think now that it's in my brain, if I ever go back and try to eat something like that, then I'm just going to be thinking back to that, and I'm going to be thinking about me like petting the cows or just like hanging out with any of the animals. And I think visiting and actually hanging out with the animals was a big factor.
I think that when people say that they have like dogs and cats as companion animals, they don't eat dogs and cats, obviously, because they look at them and they see their own companion animals. And I think that why not? Like, why shouldn't all the residents at the sanctuary, I think they can also be considered companion animals, just because they give us so much comfort, so much love and affection. And when you think about it, any resident, any animal could be a companion animal. And it's not until you actually step back and realize that it's not normal for us to be consuming animal products and eating their meat, that any animal can be considered a companion animal. And I think that was my biggest switch from vegetarian to veganism, because you start to see all of these residents as their own individual beings, that they have their own fun personalities and they give you love and affection in their own ways, just as a dog or a cat could give you. So I think that we should broaden our companion animal range to include all of these other living beings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I agreed with everything you said, and oftentimes, and I know there's many Janes in the audience, and I think a lot of us come from a similar background, right? We start off as vegetarian, and I know myself. I was, I guess, born, so I guess like raised in America. A lot of products also contain eggs in it as well, and so we wouldn't. I know a lot of us wouldn't eat eggs whole, but then if it's in cake, we would just call it like invisible eggs, and we just eat it as well. And so I think once you make that connection that the food we eat has a direct impact to the animals that we love so much, that really like once that clicks, I think it makes a big impact on everything you do. And so when I became vegan, it was a switch from looking at what contains eggs as well as what contains dairy, and then making that switch as well. And it wasn't overnight for me. It was definitely like a process. So it took me, I think, at least 6 or 7 months to fully, I guess, like change my lifestyle. But I think even having these conversations is like step one into making that change. So really grateful that we're having these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I would say also for me the same thing. Growing up Jain and vegetarian, and other friends who were Hindu, we often had that kind of invisible eggitarian, lacto-vegetarian kind of diet, where like if it was in something, that we would eat it. But to me, I just have to also add that like I didn't really ever understand the Jain explanation for why we didn't eat eggs. And it seemed to make much more sense when I started reading and hearing. I didn't have the fortune to go to a sanctuary, but I learned about what happens to the eggs with the male chicks being discarded, and the mother, the egg-laying hens also being treated horribly, almost like an analogy to the cows in the dairy, where it's like the mother cows are treated horribly and then they're killed, and their babies are then either raised into the same cycle or killed. So once I learned about that, like what actually happened, that was the motivation for me. I think there is a traditional Jain reason not to eat eggs, but it never really fully clicked. But I agree with you. Once you kind of either hear or see or get to experience, if you're fortunate enough to have the kinds of experiences that Mihek and Mansi had, like what actually happens to these animals, it's very hard to turn back. Now that's not to say it's an easy transition. And we know folks that were one-time vegans, or people that made the intention and they had a hard time in the beginning. So it can be hard to follow through on our best intentions. It can be hard to stay vegan despite our intentions because of the lack of support of the environment around us. So, if anyone on the on the Zoom wants to put in questions that they have or challenges that they faced, that would be a great discussion to have. And in the meantime, you know, Sunny, I know you've had a lot of discussions about this, and Mihika and Mansi, like, do you have any suggestions for those who might be considering making a transition, like how to handle some of the challenges? And also maybe like what you had at Thanksgiving. We just had a holiday that's centered around eating animals. So how'd you navigate that?
Yeah, Mansi and Mihika, if you want to go first and maybe share either some tips or advice for those that are interested in making that shift. And then I can add a few thoughts as well.
I know it's really, oh, sorry, you can go.
I would definitely take it slow. At least growing up completely vegetarian, I would say that the transition for me was slightly easier than someone who had grown up eating meat. But take it step by step, and I wouldn't go into it thinking that you would cut it out forever. Try it for a couple weeks, and then see what you like and don't like and go from there, because there are an infinite amount of options. There's even a list if you Google foods that are accidentally vegan, like Oreos are accidentally vegan and you would have never known. And there are so many alternatives. Like for eggs, there's Just Egg, which is made from mug, like things that we eat, like lentils and normal Indian food. And it's I wouldn't say it's not an end all be all, but start thinking like just slowly, because it's just like Sunny said that it took him a couple months to actually get his footing in. It's not going to be a like quitting cold turkey process like overnight.
Yeah, I was saying, I know there's a lot of like, you can start off easy. I know you can switch out mayo for hummus if you're making a sandwich, or you can, for seasoning, you can use soy sauce. There's a lot of different alternatives that if you start off slow and you use those at first, maybe you can find what you like between all of that. And if you do decide to go vegan, you can continue to use those. I know I do that. We have a hoagie shop like at Pitt, and they have mayo, but I switch that out for hummus now, or pesto. If they have some vegan pesto, you can also use that. For Thanksgiving, I had Brussels sprouts, potatoes, asparagus, and we both actually had enchiladas, which is really weird. I know that's not a typical Thanksgiving dinner, but we both had enchiladas too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think when it comes to transition, we often talk about the importance of having a support system. And so whether you have like family or friends or others that are maybe around you, letting them know that, hey, you know, I'm interested in making that transition. It's gonna require a lot of energy and commitment, and you know, I need your help in supporting me. And so you know, for those that live with their families, that their family may not understand why they want to go vegan, that's, I think, one way to go about it. I know me personally, the way I did it was I told my mom that you know, you raised me with, you know, these values, and you say, you know, with these Jain values to treat animals with compassion. And it's this very values is which, you know, made me want to transition to veganism. And so even just like explaining it in a very simple terms, you know, I think is good enough. I know many people end up you know, going through like a transitionary period. So some people will take a few months and they'll slowly cut out certain things from their diet, which is like my case as well. So I started off with milk. So milk was, I think, the easiest for me personally, just due to, you know, all the non-dairy milks that exist in the world. After that, I, you know, gave up yogurt, and then I gave up cheese, and then I gave up butter at the very end. So I have like a very like systematic process. And I knew at the end of the day, like my end goal was to go fully vegan. And so as long as you have like that vision in your mind of this is where I want to go, you can work towards it. I know other people, they do it overnight as well. So there's definitely stories out there where people just said, you know, I watched this video and I'm just so shocked by what I watch, and I just want to go vegan starting tomorrow. And so people do that as well. And there's actually a third option that a lot of people do. And what they do is they'll like finish off everything in their house. So if you have like a fridge and pantry full of dairy, like they'll just like finish that off. But the next time they go to a grocery store, they'll make sure to buy only vegan products. And so within a period of time, you'll suddenly notice that your fridge is fully vegan, your pantry's fully vegan. and you've actually essentially got rid of all the non-vegan stuff in your house. And that I think is a big part of making an environment that's vegan friendly. As if you have a hunger attack, or if you just want to cook something in the middle of the night, you can just open up your fridge and you have all these wonderful vegan options instead of what you had before. And so yeah, and I see there's a few comments as well.
Yeah, I wanted to just chime in a little bit about the transition for a minute, and then I agree the comments are worth exploring more. The transition is really different for different people. So I think, what we've talked about is the gradual approach works for a lot of us, maybe most of us, I don't know. But there are these personalities that actually do really well with big dramatic changes. Like they have realizations and they want to act on it now. So, I've met people that just, they said, once it hit and I knew that becoming vegan was the right thing to do, that was it from that day. And often it's folks that were meat eating to begin with that make the most dramatic changes, actually. Gary Francione told the story about how, I think it was at the time, he was friends with Ingrid Newkirk from PETA, and she started talking to him about what he was doing with drinking dairy. And he realized how much violence it was. He basically poured everything. He poured all the milk down the drain. He kind of like threw out all his stuff, and he just made this big dramatic change. So for some people that works. So one of the comments in the chat was about, I want to come back to Coley's wonderful comment about veganism, but if it's okay, I want to go to Bakul Mathalia's comment, if that's okay, and all of us can share a little bit about that first, and then we'll go back to Coley's comment. Bakulji's comment is about how it may be hard visiting India to be vegan or to stay vegan, and hard to find vegan products, especially milk substitutes. And I know Sunny and I actually both have written posts on Vegan Jane about traveling to India as vegans. And one of our former panelists on our Diwali program is quite involved with helping to raise awareness in India. She hosts, Ruchika Chitrabhanu hosts Ahimsa Fest. So, maybe Mika and Mansi, I don't know if you probably haven't been to India because of the pandemic. So I don't know if you have any experiences, but if not, maybe Sunny, talk a little bit about your travel, and I can chime in, and then anyone else on the Zoom who's been to India or has connections, we can also talk more about that. So go ahead, Sunny.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, this is often a common misconception, not the common, but in general, that cows in India are treated okay, and it's a North American thing. But as more information is coming out, we're finding out that cows globally are being treated horribly, and their lifespan is being cut by 90-95%, whether it's in India or in North America.
And India is exporting beef because of the dairy. And that was actually the one fact that convinced the late scholar Padmanabh Jaini that veganism is something that Jains really should consider. Like at one point, like many other Indians, he thought the traditional vegetarian diet is enough. And like, what is all of this trend toward veganism? But when we talked to him about that, which you're kind of alluding to, that actually changed his mind. So you're right, like there's that misconception. Yeah, and there's a lot of information now. So like in India, there's artificial insemination. You'll see that, and there's actually a lot going on in India that I can go into. But in terms of surviving India as a vegan, and this, I sent a link in the chat. This is something I think maybe I think it was wrote in 2019. So I think the world has changed dramatically since then. I think there's a lot more vegan options available in India as well. And so I've actually joined a Facebook group called India Vegan Revolution, I think it's called. And they sit there and talk about all these incredible like products and businesses that are popping up in India for vegans as well. And so just a few things off the bat. Soy milk is available everywhere in India now. So I guess soy milk is a good alternative to regular dairy milk. And they also have almond milk. And these are milks that you can actually make at home as well. So if you don't want to go to the store and buy it, you can actually just, soak like oats or almonds in water, leave it overnight, and then just like blend it, and you'll have almond milk essentially. And you can just, strain it that way. Also going out, there's a lot of, even like street food, there's ways to make it vegan. Sometimes you have to sometimes they make pav bhaji in batches. So they'll
they'll make the pav bhaji and then they'll put it into another pot and then they'll add all the butter into it. And so you can actually ask to get the pav bhaji before they add all the butter into it. And so there's like a few like hacks like while you're in India to eat vegan Indian food. But in general, I think in 2021 and I guess almost 2022, the options that are available in India, it's so much different than it was before. So it's totally possible to be vegan in India. And I would highly encourage going into India with that mindset. And you can plan beforehand on how you're going to eat food at different people's houses and how you're going to, purchase food for yourself.
Shilpi or Shaleen, I think, had put something in the chat, and we're so happy to have them on the webinar too. Did you want to share a little bit more about, I think one of your parents, one set of parents lives in India and how they're able to navigate?
Hi, everyone. This is Shilpi. Hi, Gina. Thank you. And Mihika and Mansi, thank you for hosting this, Gina. And yeah, we were so grateful to have Mihika and Mansi at the sanctuary for 2 weeks, volunteering and working really hard. I just wanted to add, since the question came up about India, my parents live in India and they're vegan, and it's not hard. It was difficult 2-3 years ago for them, but now it's not that difficult. There's a brand called So Good. Their almond milk is great, and my dad makes tea, and he loves it. And they also found a coconut milk-based yogurt. Of course, it's expensive right now because the demand's not there, but then as the demand grows, the prices will of course go down. But there are great alternatives, and my parents live in Baroda, Gujarat, so if you go to Bombay or Delhi, you would probably find even more vegan options. But to find, and then there's another brand called Good Milk that is also growing really fast in India. Similar, they're making oat milk out of oats, and I think they also have oat and almond. But yeah, they're in Bangalore, if I remember it right, but they are delivering to other states and cities in India.
That's great. We lived in India for a year. I didn't grow up, and I don't have a house there permanently, but when we lived in 2015, we were able, in Ahmedabad, we were able to find soy milk in the Reliance grocery store down the street. Tofu was available very easily. Like, we made tofu and pasta for dinner because we couldn't cook Indian all the time. We had roti and dal and bhat and everything for lunch, and we had that kind of food. We were able to make cashew cheese because you could get cashews. In Spanish, cashews are actually nuez de India, nuts of India. So they're actually indigenous to India. So it's actually easy to get cashews. So we soak cashews, blend them, and then you can make a culture out of the soaking fluid of like wheat berries. You can also get whole wheat berries in India. And we were able to make our own cashew cheese, and the climate there is so conducive to culturing. So the kind of stuff that you can buy now, which is so easy to find in North America and Europe and stuff, like you can make in India. And I think, like you said, Shilpi, it's getting to be easier and easier. There's more and more products. And if a sort of a small-ish city like Baroda has that much, yeah, if you're in Bombay, and Delhi, and I think Bangalore and Hyderabad, because of the educated tech population, there's a lot available there. So it's getting easier. It's getting a lot easier. And if you're just visiting relatives, I've been vegan for 30 years. So at this point, my relatives who aren't vegan yet, they know that I am and my husband is. So now they kind of know what to make. They've gotten used to it over time. And so it becomes easier, with extended family, wherever they live, over time, because there's more veganism in the world. They've heard of it, and they know you, and they want to take care of you, and they know that they can make a lot of things vegan. It's not that hard to make it at home too.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add one thing. This is some new news that had recently come out, but they actually the Indian government has released a vegan symbol for products that are vegan in India. So you may be familiar with the green dot, which signifies that something is vegetarian. And sometimes they'll use a reddish brown dot for non-veg food. but they actually have a vegan symbol now. And this is something that has been released like maybe in the last month or so. So I believe that in the coming months, you'll start seeing products in India that is fully vegan. And you know, within our vegan spaces, we actually like looked at this and we read the definition. And this includes, you know, completely vegan, which includes animal testing, includes even in the production of the product, as well as the final product. And this also includes not including honey, as well as silk and leather. So this is like truly vegan. And so that's another exciting, I guess, development in the vegan space in India, which is growing rapidly right now.
So we had Coley speaking earlier about her experience or his experience. I'm sorry if I didn't get that right. Coley says, I love being vegan, absolutely changed my life, grew up eating meat, and I'm so thankful I fell into this lifestyle. Thanks, everyone. I don't know if Coley wants to say anything more about that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely willing to speak. I grew up in a very meat-heavy home. Like when I was a vegetarian in high school, my family thought I was going to die. They were like, what is going on? And I've been vegan for about 4 years now, and it has been the most life-changing thing, like in every aspect, my physical self, my mental self, just my energy, and how I communicate with people is just exponentially just so much more positive and inviting and lovely. And I am a strong advocate for the vegan community.
Thank you so
also,
much.
I'm going to start volunteering at Luvin Arms. I just moved to Boulder a week ago today. And I visited Luvin Arms over the summer, and I just finished my paperwork and stuff. And I'm just so excited to be around animals and like-minded people. So, yeah.
How wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Absolutely.
really, I'll hope to hear more about your experiences at Luvin Arms coming up too. One of our participants private messaged me and asked about whether I was a physician, by a medical doctor by profession, and asked if so, how does veganism help human health? So I am a family physician and preventive medicine trained physician, and I can say a little bit about this, but I can also open it up to others like who've learned a lot about this and have their own personal experience about health benefits. So what I can say is really well known is that people eating a healthy vegan diet, meaning whole foods, plant-based, minimally processed vegan diet, have been shown in many studies, and including in our Indian community with experiences that have been shared, to reverse heart disease, to reverse and reduce their chances of even getting in the first place type 2 diabetes. There's beneficial impacts on blood pressure, and some evidence suggesting decreased risk of cancer. Large-scale studies have shown vegans tend to live longer than even vegetarians, who live longer than omnivores. So it's kind of like a dose response. The less animals you consume, the longer you live. So there's a lot of benefits there. That's kind of in terms of chronic diseases, which actually we Indians genetically tend to be predisposed to have a high risk for. So we tend to have, just look around you and your family, your older relatives, how many folks have diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, et cetera. And so this is one intervention that is good for the animals and good for us, can really help our health. Apart from that, like if you're at a different stage in life, what families with smaller children have found is that going vegan can reduce the risk of respiratory infections and colds, because dairy can produce a lot of mucus. I think Shilpi maybe has her own experiences with allergies with her son. I don't know, Shilpi, if you wanted to share that. But yeah, so there's that prevention of infections in children part. And some people have thought that exposure to dairy is actually one of the triggers for even type 1 diabetes, although there's less evidence for that than for the type 2 diabetes. So there's a lot of health benefits. With body weight, vegans tend to be a little bit thinner. And especially, like I said, if you eat whole foods plant-based, which is not the junk food that happens to be vegan, but like, a sensible diet with whole fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, Yeah, tell us about your experience, Shilpi.
But the reason I went vegan was for my son, older son Arav. He's 10, and when I nursed him, he would break out. His eczema broke out, and this was the first week after he was born, and he would also, throw up every time he nursed, and so it didn't seem right. And so what I found was the proteins in cow's milk is meant for baby cows, the amount of proteins that are in the cow's milk, and so even though he was not having it directly, he was nursing, and I was having it, and he was nursing, it was still affecting him. I quit dairy from my diet, and I think 3 days later, his eczema was gone. He was not throwing up that I had to hold him at 45-degree angle for a couple of hours. None of that. Everything changed, and it was. It's then when I realized, and I did my research and found that the proteins, and that's the reason there are so many people that are lactose intolerant. It's not a lactose intolerant. You can't have that lactose, the amount of lactose that is in the cow's milk, because it's not meant for a human body. It's it's meant for cows to grow from 100-pound baby to 1,000-pound cow, and humans, their anatomy doesn't fall into that. So yeah.
Exactly. And then there's some evidence that the milk protein casein may be implicated in cancers as well. Any other participants want to chime in about benefits that they may have experienced or challenges in going vegan? I don't know.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead. No, please. Go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in real fast and say that as much as like weight and things don't matter, I have actually lost more than 100 pounds off of the vegan diet just by accident. And it's just from being plant-based. And then being plant-based gave me so much more energy to just go outside and all of these things. And it was just like a side effect that these really healthy benefits just all fell into place. And it's just a great lifestyle. Thank you.
Yeah, so to add to the documentaries that Mansi and Mihika were talking about, there's What the Health. So that one is focused a lot on health. The Game Changers, I think, Sunny, you really like that one. I think that one really appeals to the young athletic folks who are looking at performance. And What the Health maybe speaks more to those of the community that have health concerns, either that they want to prevent issues from developing, or they're trying to manage other chronic issues that may be already manifesting. Do you want to say anything more about What the Health, Sunny? Or Game Changers, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Game Changers is amazing. I think there's a big stereotype, especially for those that like work out, that are in fitness, that you can't have muscles, or you can't make muscles on a vegetarian or a vegan diet. And I think Game Changers kind of breaks that mold, and it just follows the story of like the top athletes in every different space, every different athletic category, and how they're vegan and how it's helped them reach optimal performance. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a really feel-good documentary. So you'll finish the documentary just smiling or very excited, or you'll probably run to the gym after watching it. But it's a very like high-spirited documentary for sure. And there's actually a handful of documentaries, and I'll write that in the chat as well. But depending on what you're interested in, there's something there.
Thank you, Sunny. I think you're going to write stuff in the chat here about documentaries, and we're getting to the point in the session that I think we might want to wrap up. It's almost 10:25, and it's been such a really wonderful, fun, and enlightening session talking to you both, Mihika, Mansi, and having the discussion with the larger group here on Zoom. I want to thank Sunny for co-facilitating, Christian for being the technical host behind the scenes, Jito, the Jain International Trade Organization for their generous lending us the use of their Zoom account. And Prem Jain and Kamlesh Mehta, both of them have been very kind in sharing their Zoom with the Ahimsa Eco-Vegan Committee. And we want to leave you with the ways that you can connect with us further. And I can share a slide, and we'll also put in the chat the links for connecting with us further. So I'll go ahead and share screen, and I'll show you the slide, and then we'll put it in the chat as well. So this shows like the various ways to connect with Luvin Arms. There's a mailing list you can join. You can also go to the website and sign up right on the luvinarms.org website. And they have a YouTube channel with really wonderful videos. For the Ahimsa Eco-Vegan Committee, our website is veganjains.com, as I mentioned in the beginning. And Jain Vegan Initiative has a whole network of sites that you can access with this bit.ly /the Jain Vegan Initiative. And then we also have emails, the Global Jain Network at gmail.com, the Jain Vegan Initiative at gmail.com, and veganjains@gmail.com. So the recording of this program will actually be posted on veganjains.com. And we put in the chat some of these contacts. And so maybe we'll just stop for some final closing thoughts. If there's some thoughts that Sunny and Mansi and Mika want to leave the group with, and I'll just express my gratitude on this Thanksgiving weekend for all of us coming together and spending some time talking about this, and hopefully inspiring us all to a more compassionate planet, more compassionate interaction with all the other animals. So who wants to go next?
I wanted to say thank you to Gina and Sunny and Christian for this webinar being made possible. And I definitely wanted to give a big shout out to Shaleen Uncle, Shilpi Auntie, Arav, Avi, and Trina for without them, this whole webinar, our experience, none of it would have been possible. And I want to thank everyone who registered and joined this webinar, because that's incredible that you're taking one step further towards opening up towards veganism and all of that. So thank you so much for allowing me and Mansi to share our experiences and for making everything possible.
I want to thank everyone as well. I know we all have a lot to learn from each other, and I think it's just really nice that we see this group of people that's willing to join and share their experiences and share everything that made them vegan and just their experiences in general. So I think it was really nice to talk to a whole different group of people from what we would get at Pitt, where we don't really have a big vegan community. So it was nice to join this and connect with other people like us.
Yeah, I would like to just add on to what both of them said. Just thank you all for being a part of this experience, this webinar. If you're someone that is either vegan or wants to go vegan, just know that there's others in our community, and you're not alone. There's a lot of us out here, and we're taking full advantage of these virtual spaces to connect with each other. We've included the links in the chat on how to get involved, but this is something that we want to have conversations about regularly. So this, won't be the first, this won't be the last conversation. And we hope that you're able to continue to be a part of these spaces. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say that in addition to the webinars that we'll have through Ahimsa Eco-Vegan Committee, Sunny moderates several rooms on Clubhouse and has very regular conversations through the Global Jain Network and the Jain Vegan Initiative. So if you're on that platform, watch for those. They're fascinating conversations. And often for Mansi and Mika, a bit of a younger demographic, although it's not age limited, and you have a whole range even on that platform as well. It's a newer platform, so I think it's taking a little way to work its way through the rest of society, but it's quite interesting, the conversations on that platform as well. So thanks for organizing all that. So with that, we'll just end with Kamemi Savejiva. I'll go ahead and recite that, and then we'll close. And this is just a prayer to say, all living, may I forgive all living beings. May all living beings forgive me. Kamemi Savejiva, Savejiva, kamantu me. Meti me Save Puesu, Veram Majamna Kanaye.